Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily News. I'm Nicholas Richardson. Today, the situation is already tragic. Right trade unionists from the National Tax Office to Prime Minister Donald Tusk. The issue is the ineffective way in which the institution is being managed by its head, Marcin Swoboda, who was appointed in December under Donald Tusk's government. The alarm is being sounded not only by trade unionists, but also by the opposition, as the policy of there is no money and there will be no money seems to be making a comeback. In whose interest is this? Huge losses for the state due to dubious invoices and much lower income tax revenues, which will reach around 28 billion zloty. In short, the VAT mafias will have a bountiful harvest.
What is happening in Poland's National Tax Administration is directly hitting the state budget. That's why trade unionists have written a letter to Prime Minister Donald Tusk complaining about the head of the National Tax Administration, Marcin Swoboda. The decisions made by the head of the National Tax Administration, in our opinion, contribute to a decline in tax discipline, a significant increase in tax crime, and thus a decline in tax revenues, and a deepening budget deficit. According to the Ministry of Finance, available with the draft budget law for 2025, there will be a shortfall of about 28 billion zloty in tax revenues to meet the 2024 revenue plan. To put it bluntly, Poland's national budget already receives significantly less money from taxes than a year ago. VAT, value-added tax, will receive 17 billion zlotys less than planned. CIT, corporate income tax, will receive 9 billion less zloty, and PIT, personal income tax, will receive 3 billion zloty less. Swoboda's personal decisions are said to be behind this, which translates into increased tax delinquency, among other things. Data from the National Tax Administration, more than 140,500 fictitious invoices were detected in the first half of this year, which is more than 100% more than in the first half of 2023. These are invoices with a total value of more than 4.25 billion zloty. Thus, this is how much the state budget is losing, more than 4 billion zloty, just for the fake invoices. There are fewer tax audits, less revenue from tax audits. There is, for example, a ban on going to inspections without notice. We have to notify everyone. There are also fewer of these customs and tax inspections in these customs and tax offices. There is less emphasis on fighting tax crime in general. Trade unionists are bitter about the attitude of the head of the National Tax Administration, who took up his post in December, already during the new term of Donald Tusk's government. There is no question of any cooperation. Marcin Swoboda treats the National Tax Administration trade union as if it were the enemy. He even withheld the payment of quarterly awards to employees, which, after media hype, will eventually be handed over. Today, the unionists are demanding the resignation of the head of the National Tax Administration, Marcin Swoboda. After what happened with these awards, after the lack of reaction, after the actions, after these effects that can now be seen, I expect the head of the National Tax Administration to be replaced. That is, for him to resign and be replaced by someone who, first of all, can talk to people, to unions, to know the problems of the organization, and who can effectively manage Poland's National Tax Administration. Because Swoboda abolished the investigation divisions in customs and tax offices, among other things. Such an action is in favor of the VAT mafia. There is a collapse in public finances, and the employees of the National Tax Administration have a huge role to play in this. They are professionals who know what they are doing. They have a lot of experience, and it is hard to ignore this appeal. The policies of the civic platform in previous governments were exactly the same. At that time, there was no money for anything. There was no effort to find it from new sources. And, unfortunately, state finances were loosened to such an extent that VAT carousels ran rampant in Poland. Today, we see that this situation is, unfortunately, beginning to reappear. According to next year's draft budget, the state budget deficit will reach a record 289 billion zloty. It is therefore imperative that the National Tax Office acts meticulously and effectively, and it is at least desirable that tax crime be combated. However, it would certainly be better if the National Tax Administration did less auditing and focused more on controlling economic turnover. Donald Tusk is getting older, and his methods of governing remain the same. Moreover, with his return to the Prime Minister's office, the golden rule seems to have returned. There simply is no money, and there will be no money. We are on the verge of a state budget collapse, and the effects of the current government will be felt in all our wallets.
Hurricane Milton, dubbed the hurricane of the century, hit the Florida coast overnight, Polish time. At least 4 people have been killed, but the authorities fear there will be many more dead, injured and missing. Many towns have been flooded, many houses flattened, although no one is yet counting the cost of the losses.
Born and raised here, never seen nothing like this.
An attack by the elements. The coast of Florida was hit by Hurricane Milton in the evening. Blowing at nearly 200 kilometers per hour, the wind, rain and surge of water were destroying everything in its path. This man's home was also destroyed. Despite warnings, he decided to stay and almost paid for it with his life.
My cat over there on the desk, I grabbed the 2 dogs and run under my bed, but that was it. Probably 1 minute total. Probably less.
There are fatalities. There are also many injured and missing. While no one has yet estimated the losses, it is known that they will be huge. More than 3 million people have been left without electricity, 2,000 flights have been cancelled, many roads are impassable. The wind tore off the roof of the stadium, damaging buildings and bridges.
Milton still carries incredible destructiveness, can wipe out communities, can cause loss of life. Storm surge is still expected to be up to 13 feet.
This is a hurricane as seen from space. Milton is huge and very dangerous. However, it's somewhat weakened when it reached Florida. In some places, the water has risen by 2.5 meters. In a few hours, it rained as much as in a couple of months. The streets of many cities and towns turned into rushing streams. Milton also triggered many tornadoes that passed over Florida, intensifying the destruction.
Stay inside and stay off the roads. Floodwaters and rushing storm surge are very dangerous.
These people had to flee, saving their lives and leaving all their belongings behind. No one would have survived in the hurricane that hit their city.
This is the 4th time that we've evacuated here. And these people, they're wonderful. They do a wonderful job. They really take care of you and they care about what happens.
Services warn that heavy rains will fall throughout the day. Strong winds are also forecast. However, Florida residents have already experienced the worst of it. Unfortunately, many people have nothing to return to because everything they had, the hurricane turned to rubble. The recovery after Hurricane Milton may take many months. The president of the Ukrainian Universal Insurance Company, Maciej S., has lost his job. The Universal Insurance Company said it was a decision of immediate dismissal due to loss of credibility. Today, it has emerged that Maciej S. has been arrested by the Ukrainian services for drug smuggling.
The whole operation took place on the 5th of October at the Uściłuk-Zosin border crossing. The drugs in the car were sniffed out by a dog, specially trained to detect such substances. Maciej S. was carrying them under the backseat of the car. The Ukrainian border guards reported that there were 3 packages with a total weight of 30 grams. The officers informed the relevant law enforcement authorities.
With less than a month to go before the United States election, the polls are in turmoil. Donald Trump is leading in Pennsylvania, one of the key swing states. Analysts say it is the Republicans who now have momentum, and there are many signs that they could overtake the Democrats in the home straight. Pennsylvania, one of the most important states on the American political map. It decided the outcome of the 2016 and 2020 presidential elections. Until recently, Kamala Harris led by a small margin, but recent polls show a significant change. Donald Trump has taken the lead.
From the very beginning of this journey, I've been on a mission to rescue our nation from a failed and corrupt political establishment and to give you back the country you believe in, the country you were born in, and the country you deserve. You're going to get it back.
What's behind the change in the polls, analysts say, is Trump's calm and substance. Trump has spent the last few weeks laying out his platform and his plan to make America great again. Trump spoke about this in an interview with Republica, stressing the importance of getting America producing energy once more.
We have to drill, baby, drill. It's an expression they use. I think it's very good. It's very informative. It says what it is. It's drilling. We're going to drill for oil, We're going to cut people's energy prices within a 12-month period from January 20th by half, 50%, 50.
This rhetoric is reaching undecided voters today, those who count most in the swing states, and they want specifics, which are in short supply from the Democrats.
To powietrze powoli tej nowości.
It's the air of novelty, and that air of inflated balloons at the Democratic Convention in Chicago is slowly dissipating. On top of that, Pennsylvania is looking anxiously at the Democrats' foreign policy, which is now rushing headlong into conflict in many parts of the world. Americans don't want to go to war.
Zaczynają mieć obawy, czy ich przywódcy.
They are beginning to worry about whether their head of state and those around him are capable of providing security and stability for their position in the world. After the Democratic Convention in Chicago, many analysts pointed out that the good impressions on the show might not be enough to fuel the election campaign until November. Today, those predictions seem to be coming true. Princess Catherine made her first public appearance today since completing chemotherapy. Alongside her husband, Prince William, Catherine visited Southport, where 3 children were killed and several others injured in a knife attack at a local community centre in July of this year. Members of the royal family travelled to Southport to show their support for the families of the children who were murdered. They also met the emergency services who were involved in the operation on that tragic day. The wife of the heir to the British throne underwent abdominal surgery in January, which confirmed the presence of cancer. Princess Catherine is slowly returning to her duties after completing chemotherapy. That's the news. Thank you for watching, and from me, have a good night and a better tomorrow.